there was some other news that I can't even believe that this name has resurfaced, but put this up on the screen. Apparently, Trump may enlist, ready for this, Paul Manafort back into his campaign.
Big Paul.
And the way the Washington Post frames this is, just gives me like PTSD. He was criticized for Russia ties. Former campaign manager was pardoned by Trump for bank and tax fraud convictions and accusations he had hid millions that he made consulting for pro-Russian Ukrainian politicians, including Yanukovych. You'll recall that whole Konstantin Kilimnik situation, to bring up some more blasts from the past in terms of the Russiagate narrative. Manafort passed some polling to Kilimnik, who was tied in with Russian intelligence. And he legitimately, I think this part of the case against Manafort was legitimate. He made millions, he hid it in these offshore bank accounts so he wouldn't have to pay taxes on it, led this incredibly luxurious lifestyle that he really didn't have the cash to completely afford, especially not if he was actually paying taxes. So that was what ended up bringing him down. But Saagar, apparently Trump wants to bring him in particular, they say, with regard to organizing the RNC.
That's what he did last time. Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
Sense.
That is what he did last
That's
time. He's a longtime figure in Republican politics, going back to, who was his first that he worked for?
Richard Nixon. So Manafort, Paul Manafort and Roger Stone were kind of OGs back in the day. They had their own firm, and then Roger eventually went his own way. Manafort kind of made his big name in Washington, made tens of millions of dollars representing like any regime in the world that wanted to hire him. This was always what annoyed me too. They were calling me a Russian stooge. I'm like, he's not a Russian stooge. He's just a paid stooge. He's like, it was like,
this
oh,
is the definition of a grifter right here.
It's like, oh, Azerbaijan, cool. Any regime out there, no matter who you are, whatever you're doing, what you're asking for, he would rep you, he would take your money. He didn't file for FARA, which is what the Mueller team got him on. It's a Foreign Agent Registration Act. Here's the thing. I mean, every lobbyist in town who's lobbying for these governments is
they got him on tax and bank fraud.
They also
and that
got him
part
on tax fraud.
Was actually, he was stashing his money overseas in these like Caribbean bank accounts and whatever to avoid paying taxes.
Not defending the man.
He's a very typical DC character, I guess is what I would say. He is far from the only one who will take whatever skeezy client from a, horrific, repressive, corrupt regime or whatever, whoever has cash to pay, they're willing to get in bed with. That's who Paul Manafort is. Trump apparently likes the fact that he did time on his behalf and he stayed loyal. He wrote some book about, the deep state and how he's politically persecuted, et cetera, et cetera. And so Trump wants to get him back in the fold because he appreciated that loyalty. It's not a done deal yet, but at least according to this report, Trump is very inclined towards this because he appreciates the way he has stood tall for him.
He didn't take his plea deal, right? Who was his dad? I forget his dad, but this is the thing. I've blacked all this Mueller stuff out of my head because it was so useless.
I forgot Paul Manafort even existed, to be honest with you.
Look, Manafort, he's not a terrible political operative. He's very old school. He almost certainly would do a fine job at the RNC. He was pardoned, right, by Trump. So it'd be one of these, not technically a felon, I guess, or maybe he was. Maybe he was commuted or something. I'm not 100% sure. But my point is just that, look, for the job that they're asking him to do, he'd probably be fine. He did a fine enough job last time around. The Mueller investigation never found any, trying to influence the RNC or any of these other shenanigans that were going on. So whatever, who cares? He probably is more competent than some of the other idiots that Trump has around him from time to time. The other thing we wanted to highlight around Trump is that he is pressing hard for a debate with Joe Biden. He made it, Truth Social post about this yesterday, also raised it in a recent Fox News interview. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Said you want to debate Joe Biden anytime, any place.
I'll even debate him in your show.
Well, I'll be happy to host it.
I'll do it anytime, any place.
Anytime, any place, Krystal. Unfortunately, though, Biden seems to be pressing back a little bit against this, if we could put this up there. He recently was asked about it and said, quote, I don't know if he's serious. I don't know if he's serious when he's asked whether he was going to debate Trump ahead of the 2024 election. The reason that's noteworthy to me, Krystal, is that that is not about will you debate him now. That's if you will debate him ever. And I mean, increasingly, I don't know. Increasingly, it does look likely that Biden may back out. That said, because Trump has committed to the anytime, any place, he even said he would participate in a DNC debate, anything that's either with the Commission on Presidential Debates or elsewhere. It does seem like the onus is on Biden to then try and work within that framework. I'm curious. I mean, if I were him, I also wouldn't want to debate, right? You know, you don't necessarily want that on display for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, if he could do an even serviceable job, he should do it.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Because as we saw with, I mean, from a democracy standpoint, obviously he should do it. Okay, now let's just talk about political tactics. If we saw with the State of the Union how low the bar is for Joe Biden, for the media to declare him a victor, I mean, if he can come out in a debate against Trump and even do okay, then I think this would benefit him tremendously, because this is the biggest question that people have in their minds. It's certainly one of the biggest questions people have in their minds about Joe Biden. Just, is he up to the task? So if you get him on the, you know, the whatever the right drug cocktail is that they've put him on before, that worked out for the State of the Union, worked out for him several years ago, and that debate against Bernie Sanders, if they could have a confidence that he could even perform adequately, then I think this would be a win for him, because you know, the expectations for Trump are high. He is seen as a performer. He's seen as, you know, this sort of political animal who can get up in front of a crowd and really do his thing. His debates against Hillary Clinton and the Republican GOP cast of characters back in 2016 are still legendary. That's still the expectation people have for him. The expectations for Joe Biden are literally on the floor. So, you know, that's the question. Does his staff even think that he can perform, he can meet those incredibly low expectations? And I think that's probably what is being debated behind the scenes right now.
So obviously, I mean, I think a position is clear. Democratically, they should all debate. In fact, they should have way more than 3 debates. The current CPD structure is completely stupid. There were many times in the past where we had a lot more debates, or we could have one big debate and it could be several hours long. There's no reason that foreign policy should be the last, like the ugly stepchild debate. They're always
especially
like,
right now.
Economy debate, the foreign policy. But it's like, well, hold on, who asked for that? Also, the current format is totally rigged by the CPD and all that. I've done some monologues on this. The town hall format as well, which I do like, but as long as it needs to be more raucous. It needs to be less pre-screened. So there are a lot of ways that we could get to that. But if I were the Biden team, and I'm talking purely selfishly, even though I do believe that he should debate, I probably wouldn't do it, because the vast majority of evidence that we have says that the debates don't matter at all whenever it comes to the polls, unless there is an insane moment. And even then, it has to have been in the media monoculture era. These days, most people know who they're voting for. They make up their minds close to Election Day, and their minds are not swayed by a debate clip. It's usually like, hey, what's the price of gas today? Or like, oh, well, yeah, I guess my bank account is doing well. People vote for all kinds of reasons. My only point being that there's enough political science debate that if you think that the risk is high enough of him having a complete brain short, I wouldn't do it if I were him, which is tragic, because I think that's probably where he'll end up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need more information about what his actual condition is.
Fair enough.
To make that judgment, because I agree with you. Typically, debates don't matter, even though our perception is that they do, and they can temporarily have an impact in the polls. But by and large, you know, political science says they don't have a huge impact. I think if they were ever going to matter, though, it would be right now. And that's because that question of his age and his capabilities is so central to people's concerns. So if he was able to turn in a, you know, like I said, an adequate, I don't even want to go to the level of solid, right? An adequate, non-embarrassing, no, remember that time his eye like exploded on stage? Like nothing like that can happen, right? Okay. Remember the first debate he had with Trump last time around? He actually won, not because he did such a great job, but because Trump was so freaking obnoxious. If you could guarantee you could turn in that level of performance again, I think it would be well worth it. And I think it could actually have a lasting impact, because, you know, the one-off of him doing all right at the State of the Union, reading from a teleprompter, that is going to fade. People need more proof of life from him before they're going to be comfortable showing up again and handing him another 4 years. So for that reason, I do think it could potentially be more consequential than debates typically are. So listen, obviously I'm cheering for them to get in the ring. And I do want to reflect on the fact that already we have sort of accepted and normalized the idea that these people don't have, even people seeking the highest office in the land, don't have to debate. Joe Biden didn't debate his primary opponents. Donald Trump didn't debate his primary opponents. So it's not like Trump would be able to use against Joe Biden like, oh, you won't even debate. You don't want to debate. I mean, I'm sure he will try to do that. But you can turn right around. Okay, well, you wouldn't debate Nikki Haley. You wouldn't debate Ron DeSantis. So we've sort of already broken that norm of expecting these people to have to subject themselves to that process, I think that's a tremendous loss for the country. I genuinely do.
Totally agree. I mean, think about this. The last time that the two of these men debated was the 2020 election back during COVID.
Right.
That's the last time that we saw either of these men who want to represent us for another 4 years that were on the stage, and the likelihood that we will see them again on the stage appears to be less and less, which is genuinely, look, here's the other reason why debates matter. Because sometimes when they become president, you're like, hey, during the debate, you said you were going to do this, and then you didn't do it. So why did you change your mind? That happens a lot. That's why getting people on the record is so important, not for media purposes, for your purposes, so that you can actually hold people accountable. So there's a lot of reasons why this is really, really bad, but unfortunately it does look like that's where things are headed.
Yes, indeed. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.